So, good evening everyone. Today we have last class for disaster management. We have done 3 class for biodiversity, environment, climate change, all this. Half class we did some part of disaster management in last class, and this will be final one. How was test? Specific in nature. Last question, Sendai framework, like question was also very typical. So why that question came? It is which year? 2018. There was one policy, disaster management policy released during that time. So that policy was adapted from Sendai framework. All these, so many recommendations were taken from it. So that's why it was in context of news. That's why it came that year. You don't remember specifics of that, that's perfectly fine. What about other question? First two. You're done. You're done, Satish? Okay, देखते. Go ahead. Any other difficulty you are facing? सब सही है. All our basic formats you are following. Division of the answer, space allocation, some kind of structure is coming. Points are generating, some kind of framework it is coming. Good. So this is first question. Let's go through the question first. Vulnerability is an essential element for defining disaster impacts and its threat to people. So we have a statement given. How, here it is question starting. How and in what ways can vulnerability to disaster be characterized? Okay. Discuss different types of vulnerability with reference to disasters. How much mark? 15 marks. 10 marks. Okay. How and what ways? There you are facing difficulty. What else? Similar content you are repeating issue. How to address this? Tell me, we'll go with the flow. Tell me different parts of the answer. How many parts you divided this? 3 parts. Which are? Introduction, leave introduction. Which are major parts you divided? 2 parts. How? What ways? Vulnerability of disaster, right? This will be first big major part of your answer. What else? Types of vulnerability. What you did in introduction? You written about statement. What is statement? Idea? So how you substantiated the statement? You given some data. 85% of India is vulnerable to some kind of major disasters. What else? Anyone given definition? You given definition. So what is vulnerability? XYZ of a place or a region or community, society, people that make them susceptible to some kind of disasters. Good. How you address this part? Tell me. What is exactly asked? Vulnerability of a disaster. How you address that? What is exactly vulnerability of a disaster? Think from an example perspective. Is the question asking you factors of vulnerability? You are giving me, if suppose some people are living in ring of fire region, they are more vulnerable to earthquakes, volcanics compared to other factors. This is like geographical reason, or what else? Basically what you are trying to say is, you are trying to give factors which add to vulnerability. Then what you will write here? What exactly is vulnerability? Give think from example perspective. Suppose take 2004 tsunami. Very common example, everyone know. Why it happened? Because of earthquake. Where the earthquake happened? Somewhere in Indonesia. Now, suppose tsunami didn't happen, then what is the vulnerability of this earthquake, this disaster? How many people died in this? Something 2.8, nearly 3 lakh people died here. It's become a very big vulnerable disaster, very high risk disaster. Now, how we reach that conclusion? It is a very high disaster. How much it impacted? You are asked to say how you characterize vulnerability. You are not asked in the question what are factors of vulnerability. Give little bit more focus. How we define this was a very major vulnerable disaster, very big disaster. How? Because it impacted directly, taken life of 3 lakh people. Now what is other reason? Suppose earthquake happened, only earthquake happened, tsunami doesn't happen, then what? Impact will be much less. So if there is a related, what? Another related disaster associated with it, the scope for vulnerability again increases. What other aspects you can think of? Think of another disaster. Think how it is, how you characterize this is a very big disaster. Odisha 1999 cyclone. What happened there? People were not aware. There was no system to evacuate people, to understand the pathway of the cyclone. No prediction, early prediction system, everything was not advanced. So all this resulted in how much deaths? More than 10,000. More than 10,000 people died. This was a super cyclone. What is super cyclone? Something like 221 km/h speed is going above that, we call it super cyclone. Does any super cyclone happened again in Odisha? In 2019 we had 16 also. Fani, cyclone Fani was there. How much people died? There was some, I guess, some reports are saying less than 100 anyway. 10,000 to less than 100, same intensity cyclone. Now what make this highly vulnerable and this not? What? Level of preparedness. When this happened, the government was prepared, the systems were made, the people were made aware, evacuation facilities were developed, so many options were available. So we can starkly reduce the casualties. Now think of another disaster. COVID. Obviously COVID is a big aspect. Think why it is so big. Anyway, number of people impacted, we already made a point. Think of other aspects. You're getting? What is asked is how you characterize the vulnerability. Affecting basic amenities. Lockdown, one of the option is lockdown. So all economic systems are being closed. Getting? So instead of thinking on factors, simply thinking factors which are underlying the vulnerability, what makes the vulnerability, like geographical factors, social factors, think a little bit more, give a little bit more attention to the question. What exactly makes this disaster big vulnerable? Suppose an earthquake, we have given some example like this. Some earthquake happened in northern Himalayas, some Uttarakhand or Himachal, impact will be still less compared to if it happened in Delhi or some other metro city. So where it happened, how many people it impacts, what correlated disasters it can bring. Second part of the question. First statement. Now in different types of vulnerability, how you address this? Different types with reference to disasters. There you can go with social, whatever elements we were discussing. It's okay to go in the first part also like this. I am not saying that it is completely a wrong approach, but give a little bit more attention to the question. All today's question, we have to be little bit more patient. You need to be little bit more innovative. So, like 2 questions we did on this disaster management. One was earthquake question, other one was landslide question. They were pretty direct question. You don't need, you have read the data, you have the knowledge base applied. We have a framework. Here all the question, there is little bit more you need to be little bit more focused. Read the question correctly, don't miss what is exactly asked. Secondly, be little bit more innovative. Suppose 15-mark question, only one question is asked. We'll see third question, I guess. Second question. One just question is there and we need to fill 3 pages. So you need to go little bit more what we can do. Go ahead. Introduction, what you have done. You can go with the statement, you can support the statement. You can go with the in defining what is vulnerability also. That is exactly what we are told. Something, any elements which make the system or people or society, community, geography susceptible to the damaging effects of a disaster, then that is vulnerable. People in plains are more vulnerable to floods. Assam plains people are more vulnerable to floods compared to somebody who is in the hills of the northeast. What is this? This is why go a little ahead. We haven't discussed such kind of a diagrams. When a disaster become high risk disaster, when there is hazard, natural hazard, something is happening or man-made itself, okay. Plus there is high vulnerability also. 1999 cyclone become issue. There was a big hazard, plus whole the system made the society vulnerable to all cyclone. So draw this kind of one diagram. Otherwise, simple Venn diagram will also work. Take quick if you want. Concept is same what we have discussed. There is nothing new in this. Go ahead. So first part of the question, characterization of disaster vulnerability. So same what we have discussed now, we are doing it. Number of people affected or potentially it can affect. Earthquake in Delhi can affect huge number of people compared to earthquake in some other areas, remote states. Related hazards. Nuclear Fukushima, that is also starting from some earthquake, then leading to tsunami, then leading to nuclear hazard. Infrastructure threat. How much road is destroyed, railways is destroyed. All these show the intensity of whatever happened. If nothing happened, even though a 10-point earthquake happened and no tsunami, no nothing, then it's still fine. Only when these elements are being added to it, then this becomes a very big hazard. Level of preparedness, we see in this, we discussed this Odisha case. Magnitude of economic loss, that's why COVID is such a big issue. Goes much beyond, like pandemic, throughout the world economic crisis it led to. You can generate more points. You can return something, tell me. Or you can think of. Anything else you want to add on? Social aspects. Women are more vulnerable. In pandemic, what we call this? Shadow pandemic. How women are more vulnerable? How women are more vulnerable? They are part of care economy. What is problem with care economy? So exposure was high, like nurse. Double burden. What else? Violence increased. Domestic violence against women increased. What else? Loss of education. Boys were given mobile if one mobile is available in the home. Yeah, all this. You can add that aspect also, social aspect. Go ahead. Any other way of thinking? Any other approach to this question? One approach you told, directly dividing it in factors. Any other? Different disasters. Tsunami, earthquake, landslide, you will go like this. Okay. But it should reflect similar ideas. Should not be totally different. Should not go in another direction. Go ahead. So what is next part? Different types of vulnerabilities. This is quite direct. This I think everyone right 5-6 points likha hoga. What are different aspects? Geographical vulnerability, as what we discussed right now. Ring of fires. It will add to geographical vulnerability in that area. Environmental, climate change is happening, sea level is increasing. All these coastal cities, Mumbai, Chennai, all these are under risk of submergence. Physical vulnerability, infrastructure, wrong methods of construction, unscientific management of earth. Economic vulnerability, like this example is there, but pandemic happened. Those who have access to health insurance, those who have this coverage, economically options are available, they are least impacted. Who are impacted is these migrant workers who don't have the economic capabilities. Nepal earthquake, they didn't, like 1999 cyclone, they didn't have the capacity to. Social vulnerability, like 20 to 30 million people were in 1 year pushed back to poverty in India. Institutional vulnerability. Example, tell me one example, institutional vulnerability during COVID. Which act we were using? Disaster Management Act was using. Epidemics Act was under use. Section 144, that was also being used. So multiple agencies, multiple people are involved. One single mechanism to handle this kind of a pandemic of this scale, that was not still available. Attitudinal issues, connect with the radicalization, we discussed insecurity, connect with some kind of wrong attitude plus some kind of social situation like joblessness. All these lead people to radical ideas like ISIS. Which state highest number of ISIS? Go ahead. So conclusion, what you have written? Something you have vision of the go and read this Prime Minister's 10-point agenda for disaster risk reduction. This is very direct example. You can connect in a way forward. You can connect with the vision of the country in disaster management answers. Getting? Beyond that, Sendai framework we will come in the question. Where will you use it? It's very hard a direct question come from that aspect. But still where you can use it is in conclusion. Something like SDGs we have done. Instead of simply quoting Sendai framework, make a half-page note of it. Something more specificity you can bring in the conclusion itself, that's an add-on. Otherwise, Sendai framework is such a common thing, everyone will cite it anyway. Go ahead. So we have second question. Disaster preparedness is the first step in any disaster management process. Same like the previous question. We have a statement. After that question is starting. Explain how hazard zonation mapping will help disaster mitigation in the case of landslides. Statement is something else and question is totally something else. And the difficulty is, this is 15 marks. Only one question is there and very 15 marks. So how to address these all issues? Introduction? You made introduction 1 page. Statement, you're going with the statement. What else? Tell me parts first. You are starting something with disaster preparedness. Definition, and you will write something more also because there is scope. What diagram you have drawn? Okay, Venn diagram, some kind of, you have drawn something like this. Different kind of steps you have shown. What else? You are writing out disaster preparedness, importance of that, how it is the first step, going with substantiating the statement. All this we say, suppose it is a part of introduction itself. What else? What is the next major part? This problem is you written all these aspects. After that, what you do? Directly jump into hazard mapping. How you address this issue? Like we are writing something totally different thing. After that, next part of the question is what? Hazard zonation for landslides. So there is, how you address this? Tell me. What you have written? Directly wrote the next heading and started the answer. One thing you can do is you can still go with defining what is this hazard zonation. Like if you are writing this 1 page itself, then you don't have much scope to do this. Thing is, if you are not half page, our standard format you are following, you are making this within the half page itself, and the question is also only one part we have to answer. So there is a scope for writing what is hazard zonation and what is it. Divide the area, make a map. This is high risk zone, this is low risk zone. So we have a clear idea where the risk can happen, all this. So making that exercise is hazard zonation. What next? You can write this more specific to landslide. Don't need to write everything, any other aspect, because question is also only regarding landslide on. What next? How will it help disaster mitigation? How this thing helps disaster mitigation? How you generated points for this? Pre-disaster, during disaster, and post disaster. Very good. Before disaster, during and after disaster. Something like that you divided. What else? You are saying how the map having a hazard zonation map will help individual. What is the argument? Let me speak it once because this sound doesn't come here. So what he is saying is he divided the answer on the basis of stakeholders like individuals, institutions, maybe local bodies, state government, national government, regional government organizations. So on these different aspects you divided the answer. Now tell me what is the arguments for this, how it is helping individual? He can be prepared. He can take some cautionary steps. What about next? Institutions? Different kind of forces can be converged and we can have a better impact. What else? Good, good, good. What any other approach what you have done? Similar, you haven't written. Go ahead. Then we will have a conclusion. So here is 15 marks, 3 page. That is little bit challenge. So you have liberty of writing this till half page or little more than that. Then you have liberty of writing about hazardation. You can even draw a India map, not drawing map. Yeah. Which question? This is right. Yeah. You can have the liberty of even drawing a India map in this. Why we have all this liberty? This is something like against what we were talking. We were talking all this day, write exactly what is asked. But here the question is only one and you cannot give 3 parts, 3 pages to it. So play around. Okay. Still major 2 part of the answer should be what is asked itself. Go ahead. So introduction, what is it? Disaster preparedness, all this being defined. Or you can go with something like this. India disaster preparedness paradigm is changing. Where it is changing? Disaster recovery to risk management. What is recovery? In next question also similar thing is. Like what it is? Term? Reactionary approach. Reactive approach to something like proactive. What does it mean? Reactive to proactive. What does it mean? What is the difference? What is reactive approach to disaster management and what is proactive approach to disaster management? In reactive you deal with impact. Once a disaster happened, what is your objective? Minimize the damage. Damage control measures, that is a major part of this. And what is in proactive? Even stopping the disaster, take measures so that even the disaster will not happen. Or take more measures so that even before the disaster we are being prepared. Early on we are doing preparation. How you can best define this? We will see through the life cycle diagram of disaster management. That is something very specific to disaster management and you should learn it. Not in this question, somewhere you can draw in the paper directly the diagram cycle, or you can generate point on this regard itself. Like you are generating point on before disaster, after disaster, during disaster. That is also obviously correct. Same process, little bit technical if you inculcate the life cycle, disaster management cycle diagram into it. Go ahead. So here what is landslide zonation, we are discussing it. What is it? We'll club different data points, like how is this data point. We'll take what is the kind of soil there. Black soil is there, it will have different kind of characteristics compared to laterite soil in Kerala. Land use pattern, what kind of vegetation is there. If June cultivation is there, then hazard may be high. If monoculture like plantation cropping is gone, then different kind of challenges. Rainfall, how it is impacting. Drainage capacity of the area. Slope aspect, how is the slope. So all these different aspects we consider, then we make a single map like this. Here by just looking, we are not having any idea of rainfall or anything. By simply looking at the color, we can say these are very high risk areas. These are high risk areas. Here there are some risks. And these are like little safer areas compared to landslide. Why these are very high risk areas? Earthquakes is there, basically hilly areas are there. Why these areas less susceptible to this? Southwest monsoon come here, intensity of rainfall is very high in western parts of the Western Ghats. Coastal areas? Encroachment of people, coastal areas and hilly areas, all this. That can happen here also, right? It's not specific to Western Ghats. Encroachment can happen in Eastern Ghats also. But Western Ghats is more vulnerable. Why? Because rainfall is one major reason. Then the steep is also very high from this western side compared to the Eastern Ghats. So multiple reason, this become, thing is this making this kind of a map is called landslide zone, hazard zonation. Go ahead. Here you should be little bit more innovative. Make a diagram of India map, even though it's not fully into what is asked. Make a something like this. If you draw, that really stands out. Even not like writing comma, comma, comma. Just make a something like this. Go ahead. So next part we have, this is the diagram which you should learn for this disaster management. You will get somewhere to draw it anyway. What you have to do is, what is it actually? Framework, like something disaster. Suppose a disaster happened here. First step what comes is response. Take 1, 2, 3 points. Response में क्या आएगा? Search and rescue, humanitarian aid. After that, recovery. Recovery means building back whatever is lost. If home is lost, build back. If people are displaced, then bring them back. Rehabilitation, damage assessment, reconstruction, all these come in recovery stage. After that, mitigation. Mitigation means yes, something like this climate change we discussed. Mitigation versus adaptation. What was mitigation? No, adaptation is we are accepting climate change. Even climate change we are trying to minimize. 1.5, within 1.5 is our target, like global warming should be. We are trying to even minimize the climate change. So here mitigation means we are minimizing the hazard itself. Suppose no hazard happens, even to that level we are trying to minimize. How it does? Like kind of zonation we do, like kind of studies we do, infrastructure development we do, risk analysis, risk appraisal, land use planning we may change. Something like that. Then preparedness, capacity building, training, NDRF, different forces which you are saying, emergency planning, surveillance system, early warning system, all this we will do. So this is something like even a little better approach compared to during disaster, after disaster. That same thing we are doing here itself, but it gives more specificity. And if you can a little bit think on these lines which are blue outside written, then it becomes very easy to generate points. 2-3 points you can generate from each part, it's more than 10 points. That will suffice the demand of the question. Go ahead. So we are doing with this question, what is asked? How this hazard zonation help disaster mitigation, especially in the case of landslide. So in response, how it helps? Response means what? Suppose landslide happened, you have to go. Landslide happened, then what you have to do? What is the response? Rescue. Some house will be down within the rock, debris will be all over the place. So take the rescue operation. If you have a map, what is advantage? You know the geography. You know where there is a scope for next disaster also. So search and rescue can be more efficient if you already have a detailed characteristics of the location. What else in recovery? Rehabilitation. And if you are rehabilitating people to the same place, to same vulnerable region, you are rehabilitating again, then that's a mess up. And how you know this is a high risk zone area? To some kind of this hazard zonation. What else? Reconstruction. Same for applicable for infrastructure. You need to build infrastructure that can either withstand this kind of to some extent, or at least not making the area more vulnerable to disasters like this. We discussed on this Kerala floods, Kasturirangan report, So what is the issue there? Unscientific construction practices is making these floods much more vulnerable. And that was discussed by Madhav Gadgil committee. Very stringent recommendations was given, and government was not happy. They created the next committee, Kasturirangan committee. All those. Mitigation, tell me one few examples. What is mitigation? Avoiding the disaster. How you can avoid it? Landslide. Avoid the risky zones. What else? Standards define karo. You should keep these kind of standards if you are making. Your what we get? Base of the construction should be XYZ strong to withstand to some extent. Or do some afforestation. Forestation to a great extent can check landslide. Drainage system design karo. So do something so that the landslide itself doesn't happen. Preparedness. Preparedness you will write capacity building. You need dedicated force, at least in the high risk zone. You need specially trained forces. And that should be reach these remote areas. Usually it happens in very remote places. So they reach there within that small period of time. And the rescue, what is difficulty in search and rescue during a landslide? Communication will be broken. What else? Usually why this landslide happen? Due to heavy rainfall, most cases. And even after the landfall, rainfall will be still going on. And within that rainfall, maybe flooding will be also happening. Within all this, you have few hours only if you want to do anything there. So that's all add to the challenges of. Go ahead. We are developing, this is what is GSI? Geological Survey of India. They are developing some kind of early warning system for landslides. How it will be done? Some kind of automatic sensors they are putting so they can predict it. So sensors, these kind of things, drones, that will also assist. Go ahead. So conclusion, what you will write? This strategy, there was one question last time, yesterday's question, right? So use that content as conclusion here. In a way forward, use that as conclusion something. Most of the question you might not get exactly replication in the paper, but try to use that data in somewhere else also. Go ahead. So we have third question. Discuss the recent measures initiated in disaster management by the government of India, departing from earlier reactive approach. Here also, what is the challenge? straightforward one question and 15 marks it is, so you need some content. So how to work out? Tell me how you address this. You written about earlier this was government strategy. Now we are changing from reactive. First you write about what is reactive approach. Now government is changing to some kind of proactive and all this approach. After that you come to the question, what are government measures? What else? Anything to contribute? Tell me what is the different parts? Recent measures only if you discuss, there is one part of it. Departing from earlier, if question is finishing here, then nothing you can do. You have to write that and come back. But since we have an extension to it, we are departing from reactive approach. So you have, like she told, you have some flexibility to play with. You can start with writing about reactive approach to disaster management. What is reactive approach? Like same as what we discussed later. There will be only damage control measures after the disaster. No other mitigation, no preparedness, that will be lacking. So what is reactive? What are issues associated with this? But keep all this limited, not make it like major part of your answer. Then you come with government is, due to these issues, government is now becoming proactive. Now what are the measures taken under this? 7 measures. Then you can write a conclusion and finish it. Major part should be this itself. This whole should be 1 page. Don't make it 1.5 page or half of your answer. That doesn't do justice to what is asked. This is only for our flexibility we are adding this. If you have lack of time, if you are writing this as last answer or something, then only write what is the steps and leave it as it is. Even if you have lack of time here also, I told you to keep time check. If you are having lack of time in some question, forget the introduction, forget the conclusion, just answer what is addressed. In 2 minutes you have to write one answer, still answer it. Don't write intro, but answer exactly what is asked, 5 points, make it and finish it there. Or in geography, disaster management question, if some vulnerability is directly asked, like vulnerability of hazard, landslide or earthquake, then make a map and show the vulnerabilities. So it will take space also, it will take some less time also. Go ahead. So this is what we have done, the framework for this question. So what we have written in introduction? India's traditional reactive approach, that is changing from same statement what you have used there. Example? We have this cyclone warning system, tsunami warning system. In 2004, there was no tsunami warning system in this region. Today we have all system established. In COIS, yes, correct. We have discussed, we have put somewhere in an example this also. Go ahead. What else? Limitations of reactive approach. Here also you can show the diagram. You can make the life cycle diagram. You can show that this part only is reactive approach. This whole part will be, we call it as proactive approach. There is still scope for making some innovative diagram here also. So what is limitations? Only after a significant damage happened, then the disaster management activity is starting. So there will be loss of life will be inevitable. Only after a considerable loss of life, your disaster management is starting. Like this cyclone. There was no disaster management efforts, no mitigation. That's why we reached the count of death 10,000. one size fit all approach. There is no local adaptation, there is no zonation mapping with local level. Timely information, there will be zonation all will come when there is need for mitigation, when we need for understanding the disaster, early warning system. All these systems will come when the policy is looking at the mitigation. If the policy itself is not doesn't looking at the mitigation, they are not allocating fund for it. Whole fund is for this crisis response. Then there is no information available, no map available, nothing. Knowledge base will be available for any reaction. What else? If there is no NDRF we have today, that also came in when NDRF came. It is made under Disaster Management Act. When that act came? 2005. So in 2000s. So before that, who is handling? Ad hoc basis, sometimes paramilitary forces, army was handling, and most of the time first response will be done by police itself. So all these other organizations are getting burdened. There is no one set of standard SOP for addressing larger, bigger scale disasters. Poor level of technology integration, like so much opportunities. How this cyclone is being predicted, satellite imagery. How this, even tsunami, everything is satellite using satellite sensors, all this. Take pick. Go ahead. What is next? We are writing something about proactive approach. So you can give some diagram. This is proactive approach. It will take into consideration all these aspects. There will be mitigation, there will be preparedness, there will be response and rehabilitation, recovery. All this will be anywhere there. The whole complete holistic take and all integrated into one aspect. Then we call it as proactive strategy. Make. But you can make two diagrams. Problem is it should not affect the core part of the answer. Like suppose this kind of a question where there is only one core part. So even if you make two diagrams, you can still answer this part decently. Some question there is three question, different question is there. There you go and make do diagrams, then maybe space issue will come. So there you have to be little smart. These kind of question give you flexibility to add more diagrams, be more innovative, be one extra part, which we usually in all this discussion we haven't told to write you anything new. Only here we are coming these challenges. So this should be done only in small number of question also. In 20 question you are writing 2-3 question, you can make little extra parts also. But rest, all our funda which we are discussing, only exactly what is asked we are answering. Nothing knowledge extra base we are providing. And space allocation should be, core part should occupy 1.5 page if 2 page answer you are writing. Otherwise 2.5 page around if 3 page answer you are making. Go ahead. Take. So this is recent initiatives. Recent means this is like kept holistically. How will you generate points for this? Think from these aspects, legal aspects, institutional aspects. We have done this for some other part also. Legal, institutional, which part it is? IR, security maybe. Security, terrorism response, legal aspects, institutional aspects. After that, think of other stakeholders, how they are creating an impact. So what is legal aspect to disaster management? Disaster Management Act. Go and check if there is a bill. If there is an amendment bill to this act. We had pandemic, we reached a situation where certain point of disaster cannot be handled within the ambits of the act. So is there any bill in the parliament pending? So if there is a bill side that also, then it becomes a recent. Otherwise it's 20-year-old act. Capacity building and DRF we created. We are specialist forces in local areas also creating by clubbing the army men in the local area, other civilian society. Disaster Management Finance Commission, extra funding is being provided. And how is this fund? Disaster Management Fund, how is the allocation? Center state allocation. All allocation is biased to a center. Center will give for 75% to normal state, around 90% to hilly states. So center is like providing more fund to disaster management. Policy prioritization is happening for all these disaster aspects. Disaster prevention is getting more importance. Now think on these aspects. Earlier there were only reactive. So main focus will be search and rescue team ko develop karo, give them training. Now it is going beyond to prevention of disaster. Assessment is doing, special data infrastructure is being made for whole country. Sensitive, eco-sensitive zones, we had discussed it somewhere. Western Ghats areas we had discussed. Some recent activities is going on regarding it. Some Supreme Court judgment recently came. What is eco-sensitive zone? We have this protected forest, reserve forest, national park, all this. Now protected forest means what? There will be some kind of restrictions, some kind of ecosystem we need to protect. Now the area just near to it, that it will be always fragile zone. If you let the polluting industry to be part of that area, that pollution obviously will reach that national park and we will have issues. So in order to protect that, we have this eco-sensitive zone. This is the national park or protected forest. This zone will be eco-sensitive zone. And what is provision for this? It can range up to 20 kilometers, something like that. Now what is controversy? Recently a Supreme Court judgment came, I think in June, July, something like that. The judgment was every protected forest, this is not compulsory to give this eco-sensitive zone. So every protected zone should have at least 1 kilometer this eco-sensitive zone. Minimum 1 kilometer, 20 is something like maximum limit. 1 kilometer at least should be eco-sensitive zone. Something like judgment Supreme Court came. Now what is issue when an area is become eco-sensitive zone? There will be restrictions on what kind of economic activity there can be going on. Which activity mostly impacted? There were protests from Kerala, like Nilgiri areas, Western Ghats areas. They were protest against this judgment and all implementation in different states. So what is the issue? Quarrying will be affected. Quarrying, mining, all this industry will be affected. They are like prohibited industries in these zones. Bottom-up approach we are bringing up. If rescue is there, only top management will decide, and in this whole disaster plan should come from below level. Like in zonation mapping will only become purposeful when it is designed at the local level. Early warning system, enquiries, same topics. Mitigation efforts, give some examples. Land use pattern changing, give some examples. Global initiative, CDRI is being formed. EA is little old one, not the recent initiative. 1994 we discussed something. 1994 it is going EA. But there have been draft EA, there are some amendments trying to be striked. You can do that. But be little, don't make it the first point. You can still use that, it's not totally away. Okay. Anything to add? Obviously. Government measures you are writing from different disaster perspective. Like tsunami, we have this early warning system installed. For earthquake, we are doing something. Okay. Every सभी में ये की point लिखेगा early warning system develop कर. Little bit cautious, but approach is okay. You can do that. I say don't make one approach your template. Juggle with it. We are we itself have so many approaches, right? 7, 8 approaches, we discussed that list and all. So don't make like you are following a formula and generating points. Play around. Disaster management, do instead of before, after and during. That is very good, right kind of thinking. Do this cycle approach, mitigation, preparedness, reaction, all this. Go ahead. So conclusion, you will manage yourself. Multi-stakeholder, something like grassroots level participation increase karo. Last question, what to do? This is a very specific question. I think most of you find difficulty in addressing this. Question difficulty है कि exactly after and before decisions was asked. So how you address this? Suppose you don't know much about anything. How you address it? Sendai framework you will know. At least targets you will not be able to remember, but you will anyway know what it is, what is the basic idea you will know. So how to address this question? Suppose with very little amount of knowledge. Very good, very good. In last question, we also discussed some measures, legal measures. When this disaster management came, 2005. So keep those there. Anything recent activities like landslide early warning system that is being developed. Then the one landslide strategy that came in 2019. So you can remember something that happened in recent times. Then something 2-3 points you can think of that in that direction. But keep an idea flow. Earlier we were reactive policy we were following. No holistic approach was there, one size fit approach was there. Now we are shifting more towards proactive approach. We are like giving more space to this disaster management. Earlier in energy policy we discussed India's energy policy, how it is changing over decades. Disaster management is also something very similar. Earlier we were not even cared about it. Now every finance commission that is becoming a major part. Every development agenda, disaster management is also becoming a part. Like ISS, EDRI is coming. So bring all these aspects together, you still can do justice to this question even if your knowledge level is limited. So tell me parts of this question. I will not discuss too much specifics into this question. It was asked because of certain happenings during that period, 2018. Tell me different parts. You can start with introduction with Sendai framework. What is it? What is the idea of it? Something like that. Targets, if you can remember, cite 1 or 2 targets. What else? Policies. Is it policies asked? Measures. Whatever is asked, keep that name only. Don't put your own innovation into it. Measures before, after. After that, difference between Sendai and Hopo. Here also you can guesswork something and make some points. Beyond that, we will not learn this because it's already very old and scope of a repetition question is very less. Then you will conclude, you can include a way forward, it's a 15 markers. So if you want to add something more to it, you can include a way forward also. Go ahead. So introduction, what you have done? Writing something about Sendai framework. What is it? What is the idea? Disaster risk reduction, setting some standards, setting some very specific targets. What SDGs did? SDGs. How many targets are there? 17 SDGs are there. Targets are very high, 169, something like that. By 2030 we have to achieve. So similarly, Sendai framework is also putting forward 7 different targets. This we need to achieve by 2030 itself. So if you can remember this, then cite one or two. Otherwise, idea you will anyway remember what is Sendai framework. So paraphrase it. Go ahead. Okay. So here we have done the same activity. We are not going to picking exactly same things which one or two like minor things that happened before after. That's already over and it's not really adding value to the discussion. Next exam you are going to write, that doesn't help. So here what we done is we are assuming that what we done for the last question, that much knowledge base you have. What government is doing recently, what is the legal structure for this disaster management activity. So that much you have, then juggle with 2000 like 2005 Act, that will be earlier framework. It will capacity building and DRF, it is formed in 2005. What else? Economic sensitive zone, this also coming in 1990s and all. Preparedness, bottom up approach, something like that clubbed with this Madhav Gadgil committee. What was the year it was formed? It is also in 2010s, before 2015, 2012, something like that. So same example, why this is here, it should be there. CDRI. So here some disaster management plan 2016 came up. That was one context for this question. So if that was in news today, you are not that much aware of it, that's okay. So that was in news that time, so you might have a few more ideas. Then after that, club the similar points, exactly same as what you have done in the last question. Now these are like major changes we can see over the years. We are going from more prioritization is getting for disaster management in development agenda. We are having a clear set of targets. Role of local bodies is increasing. Synchronization with SDGs and climate change targets are the targets we have. Proactive framework, which already talking all day. So what is difference between these? You want to pick? What is the difference between these two? Very, very similar differences. What are the major changes we have seen? Similarly, there will be like there was no exact targets in HOCO. Here we are keeping a targets to achieve by 2030. Similarly, other aspects. So much discussion. You can pause the video and note down it. Otherwise, it's not going. Not some question which we add value to it. Only learn about Sendai framework that you can juggle with, use it. Look for some diagrams of Sendai framework that will add value to whatever answer writing you can do. Yes, yes. There is a came because that was in news, that was in talks. Otherwise, the 20-year back act, exactly that act, what was it, that doesn't ask, usually. So, if it is coming that year, that may be in news. So, you may have more points than you are thinking today. It's 4 years ahead, so you have difference. Go ahead. Conclusion, you will manage resilience, CADRI, something like that you can follow up with. So that is end of disaster management also. Two kind of question you see in disaster management. Something question particular to some disaster like earthquake, landslide, tsunami, cyclone. That where you study from NDMA website, go to that. There are list of 5-6 natural disasters, some man-made disasters. Go and learn that perfectly. Beyond that, if some disaster is in news, some major disaster is in news, like Vizag gas leak tragedy happened, that is a man-made disaster. So if something like that is in news, then go and learn what is the legal framework for that, what is the institutional framework for that. In Vizag accident, that company was not having the XYZ clearances. It was working without clearances, it was working without papers. And now it was working for 20 years something without any clearances. So learn about it, what is the issue. big some can come. Road accidents or something, it can come. But don't give so much attention to it. Don't make it 2-page note of it. Make a half-page note. Keep some data. Okay, how much people are dying? 1.5 lakh people around are dying on roads per year. What measures we need? Motor Vehicle Act, something like that, recently passed 2 years back, right? Stringent provisions. We need more provisions. So add something to it. Keep some solid content, but don't go too much into it. What else? Then there are some other questions. One is specific type of disaster. These questions, 3 aspects are coming. Either the disaster is in news, or that will be very basic disaster which is given in the NDMA website, or government some policy has been released, like in landslide, national strategy has been released, then there is high chance of asking. Other question is this kind of concept. Disaster preparedness, what is it? Disaster vulnerability, what is aspects of it? In these kind of question, have some conceptual clarity. Then the same example, same whatever you are doing, that is to be used. There you need to be little bit innovative, little bit more focused. And the other kind of questions are very direct. You know the data, just replicate. Here maybe you don't know the exact things, but still with the existing knowledge you can do justice to these kind of questions. Okay. Anything else? Anything else to ask? Conceptual. India's response is how it is changing. Proactive, reactive, all these aspects. Okay, so that's all. Thank you so much. From tomorrow we have society, not geography. Society is being scheduled for this week. Rajesh sir will come and we'll have society discussion. Keep a tab on that Telegram group. Schedule and some keywords list all will be published by tonight or tomorrow. Okay, thank you.